Christianity didn't just arrive quietly in Buganda, it arrived violently and with a lot of confusion, confrontation, and chaos. In the late 19th centuries, missionaries entered Buganda, what you know today as modern-day Uganda, with the Bible. But what they also came along with were alliances, new loyalties, and new pressures. And as such, their religion didn't come alone. It came with power. And this tension isn't new. From the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verses 24, no one can serve two masters at a time. What sounds like theology in the Bible, on the page, on black and white, became reality in the kingdom of Buganda. At the royal court, belief wasn't private, it was highly political. Some aligned with Islam, some aligned with Christianity, and some others aligned with Protestant beliefs, while there was a tiny number of some who aligned with the Pan-African spiritual beliefs which they were brought up in. And when belief becomes alliance, the problem is conflicts always follows. Scriptures actually speaks to this tension. In Matthew it says, I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. Matthew 10:34. Not because faith is violent, but because it divides loyalties. Under the reign of Kabaka Mwanga II, the division and pluralist society, or the pluralist confusion in the kingdom of Buganda became deadly. Young converts who refused royal authorities and imposed religions were executed. From John, if they persecuted me, they persecuted you also. For them, this wasn't abstract faith. It was a decision that costed them everything. The young persons in Uganda who died as a result of their choice of belief are remembered today as the Ugandan martyrs. But their story is more than a memory. It's a moment where faith, power, and resistance collided. So what really happened in Buganda? Was it spiritual transformation? Was it political disruption? Or can we simply categorize it as both spiritual transformation and political disruption? In Buganda, what people believed shaped where they stood. Religion didn't just spread, it rearranged the kingdom and redefined loyalties, authority, and identity. We shouldn't be bothered asking if religion changed Buganda. We should be preoccupied with asking who controlled the change which religion brought in Uganda and at what cost. As much as power is involved, belief is never neutral, because you either follow the belief of the principle of the state or follow your own belief. And if the principle of the state is despotic, they would want you to abandon your own faith and follow their own faith, or face the consequences of following your own faith. When faith enters a kingdom, the bottom line is that it never stays private. Let us visit faith, belief, transformation, and spirituality in the Bugandan kingdom. And this young, intelligent man is leading us in the conversation today.
Now, Buganda is one of the richest and the influential traditional kingdom in Buganda, and we're going to see how it played a role in one of the challenges that befell Christianity in the then Uganda. All right, now it has been recorded many times on how Christianity has faced persecutions, all kinds of persecutions. But then the good thing is that most of these things happening were written and they were foretold that a lot will happen this way. One of those statements was made by Jesus himself in John chapter 16 verse 2. Jesus would say that a time will come that anyone who kills you will think he is offering services unto God. And in verse 3 he says that they will do that because they do not know me, neither do they know the Father. In fact, Peter would have this to say in encouraging the believers who were undergoing persecution, then to say to them not to count the things they are going through as though it is something strange. It is actually a way of building the faith of the believers, to stand strong in the midst of persecution, to stand strong, not to renounce their faith in Jesus Christ. So the apostles had a way of encouraging them, because persecution is actually part of the journey. Nonetheless, in Africa, we're going to look at how some of these things actually happen in Africa and down straight in Buganda. All right, so the execution of Christian converts in Buganda, known as Uganda Martyrs, is one of the most significant religious and political events in East African history. All right, so this was how it actually happened. Between 1885 and 1887, a group of young men, mostly pages in the royal court of Kabaka Mwanga II, were executed for refusing to renounce their Christian faith. Let me say that again. They were executed for refusing to renounce their Christian faith. It is amazing how that somebody will kill someone, persecute someone, punish someone, just because they refuse to give up their belief or give up their faith in something. Well, it happened. All right, so about 45 martyrs are remembered. 22 were Catholics, and then 23 were Anglicans, and many of them were burned alive at Namugongo. They were burnt alive. All right, so these are the reasons actually that caused or resulted to that execution. Now, the reasons were both political and cultural. It wasn't even religious. All right, so you could see that this is a self-centered something. Number one, it is the threat to royal authority. Now, Christians converts often placed loyalty to God above loyalty to the Kabaka Mwanga saw this as rebellion. Now, this matches the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Babylon in the book of Daniel, where Nebuchadnezzar built a statue and he commanded that everyone around the world should bow. But there were these three Hebrew boys who would not bow to that, and as a result, they were thrown into a furnace of fire. And of course, the encounters that happened. All right, then secondly is foreign influence. Now, Christianity came with European missionaries, and then which Mwanga feared would lead to colonization and loss of independence. Of course, the Bible says that a time shall come that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be exalted high above any other mountain. So Christianity is a movement that has great influence. Influence is a key in the propagation of the gospel, the move of Christianity. It is amazing that those who are in power then know that it has that much effect. All right. So third is cultural conflict. Now, some Christian teachings challenged traditional Buganda norms, including royal practices and authority. I wouldn't actually call it a challenge. I would say that Christian teachings tends to strike a balance around areas like this. Reason, because not all African tradition is wrong on its own, but Christian teaching comes to strike a balance so that people would understand the place of tradition and then understand the place of faith. But then when people begin to fight the Christian teaching, it is because, now of course these things are written in the Bible to be so, but then it is because many people do not want to give up their tradition and to see light in the ways of God. So they would see it as the teachings coming to challenge their tradition. So these are the reasons actually that led to these executions. All right, so the climax of the event, that is, came on June 3rd, 1886, when a large group of converts were marched to Namugongo and executed, many of them by burning. Now the date is now commemorated every year as Uganda Martyrs Day. So if you've ever experienced a thing like this, this is actually how it started. Now, amongst the many who were executed then in Buganda are number one, Charles Luwanga, and he is a leader, or he was a leader among the Christian converts, and then Kizito, only about 13 to 14 years old, and then James Hannington, an early victim whose death heightened tension. For Charles Luwanga, I remember growing up and hearing that name. In fact, I stayed in an environment where there was a particular hall that was named after Charles Luwanga, and it was a place where church meetings were held. I didn't know why, though the name was very loud as when I was growing up, but finding out in history, I know why that place was given that name. All right, so this is it. Despite the persecution or the execution of Christians in Buganda, Christianity spreaded. All right, so ironically, the execution strengthened Christianity instead of stopping it. The courage of the martyrs inspired many to convert. Now, this is the beautiful thing, for Christianity. Whenever persecution is going on, we have seen this. When you travel back down to Hebrews and you read Hebrews chapter 11, you will see where it is recorded that many Christians were persecuted. They were martyred, right? Now, and they were given, some of them were given freedom. They were offered freedom in exchange, for their faith. They were told to renounce their faith so that they would go free. But then the beautiful thing is that many of them would rather die. They would rather die than to be set free and remain gripped to the sins or to the world itself. Many of these Christians saw that they saw death as a way of honoring, or as a way to honor God. They saw that than for them to live, they do not see the importance. They have journeyed so much in God that they were not scared of death, because at this point Christians believe that death is only an exit into another reality. And then to make it more beautiful, when you die in Christ, this is a life. All right, it's not just it's life itself. Okay, so in Buganda, the courage of the martyrs inspired many to convert. The beautiful thing for me is that how would people be dying, and then that will encourage others to come into what actually is killing others. Did you hear what I said? People are dying because of a thing, but then while they were dying, others were being encouraged to join them in what is killing them. This is Christianity for you. It is life. It is faith. That's amazing. All right, so in 1964, Pope Paul canonized the Catholic martyrs, making them saints in the global church. All right, and then that led to Namugongo now being a major place where there are major shrines like the Catholic shrines and then the Anglican shrines. Now, millions of pilgrims every year visit that place, especially on the day of the martyrs. All right, so the Uganda martyr story is important because it shows the clash between African kingdoms and foreign religion, the role of faith in resisting political power. This is amazing. And then the early roots of Christianity in East Africa. Now, Christianity is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I personally don't believe that Christianity is here to challenge religions, to challenge other ways of life, but then Christianity is here to introduce a life that is superior to any other life. The challenge is people holding on to tradition. The challenge is people holding on to their ways and refusing to see that there is a way superior to what they hold on to. Jesus will literally say this. He says, I am the way. He says, I am the truth, and I am the life. No one goeth to God except by me. This is African history. Stay tuned for more.